Okay, well, we're going to have a comedy relationship classic tonight. And it doesn't get any better than this. So, if we pick the line from the Bible, there's a line in the Bible that says, "All things work together for good for those who love the Lord." And then in the chorus it says, "All things work together for good. There are no exceptions except in the ego's judgment." So it's interesting when you start to apply that to perception, and it's particularly when you start to apply it to relationship. When you think about all the relationships in your life, all of them from childhood all the way through in your life, and it's interesting to just open up to the idea that there are no random relationships. There is no such thing as chance. There is no such thing as luck or good fortune and bad fortune, but that all the relationships have the same purpose. And therefore, because of that, they all are purposeful. In fact, Jesus would even call them maximal, that every relationship is maximal in terms of teaching and learning. Then there's a passage in the Course, it looks like it's lesson 135. What could you not accept if you but knew that everything that happens, all events, past, present, and to come, are gently planned by one whose only purpose is your good? That's amazing. Gently planned. And so you start to realize that that's the blessing in relationship, that there's nothing out of place, nothing that's said or done, nothing that seems to occur is out of place in any way, and it's all just for the opportunity to forgive, which is what unifies all relationships. And then, before we start the movie tonight, I thought I would talk about that section in the Manual for Teachers, which is called "What are the Levels of Teaching?" Because with that perspective, it must mean that, as he says in here, the teachers of God have no set teaching level. Each teaching learning situation involves a different relationship at the beginning, although the ultimate goal is always the same: to make of the relationship a holy relationship in which both can look upon the Son of God as sinless. And then as it moves on down in that section, it goes all the way down to paragraph 5. The third level of teaching occurs in relationship which, once they are formed, are lifelong. These are teaching learning situations in which each person is given a chosen learning partner who presents him with unlimited opportunities for learning. These relationships are generally few because their existence implies that those involved have reached a stage simultaneously in which the teaching-learning balance is actually perfect. This does not mean that they necessarily recognize this. In fact, they generally do not. They may even be quite hostile to each other for some time, and perhaps for life. So that's pretty strong from Jesus, but that's really, it makes you curious about the teaching-learning balance, that if everything is planned, gently planned by one who knows you're good, and even those relationships are part of planning. That will be part of the movie tonight. The movie is When Harry Met Sally, and Harry and Sally are brought together for, we'll say, a lifelong learning opportunity, and we get to watch it evolve and unfold. Yet, should they decide to learn it, the perfect lesson is before them and can be learned. And if they decide to learn that lesson, they become the saviors of the teachers who falter and may even seem to fail. No teacher of God can fail to find the help he needs. So I feel like that's a part of community, in the sense that we have experienced these lifelong relationships, even though they're generally rare, that it's like when you allow the Spirit to orchestrate everything, and the key word is allow. When you open and accept, okay, this is for my benefit, without thinking, oh, I'll just pick and choose who I want in my life, but you just start to allow it to be given, and then you tune into that shared purpose, then it all starts to light up, because that's the purpose of the relationship, is to find that shared purpose and then experience that shared purpose really together, and that's the beauty of everything. So in the movie tonight, we have Meg Ryan playing Sally, and we have Billy Crystal playing Harry, and they are brought together, I think, as I recall, it was on maybe a college campus, and then they come together and they decide to kind of take a road trip together. And a lot happens in that car because all their darkness comes up for the healing, for the release, and that's what the beauty of the movie is. I think the filmmaker, or the director, is Rob Reiner. I don't know if any of you even remember this Archie Bunker, and what was that called? Archie? All in the Family. There we go. We have an All in the Family fan, Archie Bunker. And Rob Reiner was, I think Rob Reiner played the son, their son-in-law. And I think they were, I don't know, her name might have been Sally, or the actress who played her was Sally, but Rob Reiner is the one who directs this movie. And he does give his mother a cameo appearance in the movie, which is in the restaurant. I don't know if you remember that scene. I'll have what she's having. The director puts his mother in the movie to say the line. Of course, now she'll forever be famous for that one line, even though she wasn't an actress. He put her in just to say that line. But it's really good at kind of showing the dynamics that come up, the need to be right, the need to understand. Those have to be two key elements that come up in the ego's version of relationship: the need to be right and the need to understand. Control issues, and whether it's a romantic relationship or whether it's what we even call friendship. When you get to workbook lesson number 76 of the Course, I am under no laws but God's, that's the lesson. Then he starts to list all of these made-up, make-believe laws that you believe in, including the laws of economics, the laws of medicine, and so on and so forth. But he does kind of slip in there the laws of friendship. So even the laws of friendship in this world of linear time and space are made up by the ego. So that just shows you how clever and sneaky the ego is, when the ego made up its own version of friendship, and then there's laws of friendship. Usually those laws are just a version of reciprocity. If you do, this is what good friends do, or a good friend should do this, or a friend should always return this favor, or that. Those are all part of the ego's scheme too. So even friendships are. But then there's this plan that's behind all the appearances that is this high state of mind, and that's the whole purpose of relationship, is just that high state of mind. They really have no other purpose except to reach that high, above the battleground state of mind. So this was good. We were just having, how long was our meeting today? 4.5 hours. We were at a restaurant for 4.5 hours, and the restaurant did get shifted from Chatterley's to this other restaurant, which was good because basically only, I think Emily and Jason ordered some breakfast, and the rest of us had water. And you shared one breakfast, and we sat there for 4.5 hours with tables all strung together in this restaurant, and then bringing water and water and water. And then we were like, check, please. And then as we're walking out, I look over there and I see the owner of the restaurant, and he looks to me, and his face is just pure glee and joy. He's just like, he's just beaming, he's smiling from ear to ear. And I went up to him and we locked our hands in, like, yeah, we did it. I said, that is definitely an out of pattern experience. I said, you try to do that in New York, at least it's like, they'd throw you out of there in half an hour. Are you going to order? Okay, you're not. Okay, move along, it gets you out of there. We were there for 4.5 hours and we do the hand clasp thing, like, yeah. But that's part of the purpose, because when you give it over to purpose, then everything is orchestrated for that purpose. So you can just relax and enjoy the ride when you're in that purpose, that flow. And that's what we always pray for. That's what we're talking about now. We're kind of, Lisa's been saying, it's a new paradigm, it's a whole new paradigm, but it's really going to be a spontaneous paradigm. Somewhere in there, the 4.5 hours, when Harry met Sally came up, I forget even how it happened, but then it was like, can we do this? And it's like, yeah, Deanie's like, yes, we can. Emily, yes, we can. So, but we can have these kind of spontaneous gatherings that are just kind of coming from inspiration, and it's just part of the joy of communion. We even had we were looking at devotional stay applications, and one of them was a woman maybe 33 years old from Florida, Erica, and she was saying, I want to come and commune with the community. It's the first time I've heard that, commune with the community. Isn't that nice? On an application, and that feels like that's part of it, because there's always new inspirations coming and new people coming and everything. But I like this, and I've always enjoyed, there's so many good Meg Ryan movies, and I did see that she's back. She's going to be in a movie that's coming out around Christmas, I think, with David Duchovny, of two people that were in a romantic relationship, and then they split up, and then they're in an airport, and both of their flights get canceled. In fact, I think it's almost like almost all the flights get canceled, but they end up having to spend the whole movie is them two in a relationship, hashing through all of their thoughts for healing. So I thought, that's Meg Ryan's return. She's coming back on the big screen with that. So that'll be fun to watch too. We'll look forward to that one. So I guess we'll just ease our way into this, but this is a classic. I don't even know when this was made. Was it 2000 and something? It's way back. 19.
It was 89.
89.
Right, I knew it was back there.
Is this before anyone was born?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow, that's kind of fun. That's a millennial party. Oh, we got an old one. Is this black and white? Lisa's like, half the room. Okay, well, let's roll it. So you can almost see the progression. The first time they come together, having never met, then it's just back and forth, where it's just a shock, like every 2 minutes, shock, shock, shock. And then when they come together again, it's more just rehashing some of their old ideas and kind of going back and forth, but it's still very much caught up into the linear ego way of looking at relationships. And then you can see it here. They're both watching Casablanca now. But when they do come together, they're starting to talk about their emotions, what they feel, how they're looking at the world, and still interspersed with a few things like her trying to mail some letters and him finally just grabbing them from them and jamming them down there, because she takes her time and has her own ways of looking at things and is very particular about things, and he seems to gloss over a lot of things. But in one sense, you start to begin to see that relationships that do not have a shared purpose are destined to fail, because they're set up to fail. That's what the ego set the world up to. It set the world up as separation. So it's relationships that don't have a shared purpose are destined to fail. And then the flip side, of course, is relationships with a shared purpose. It just draws the mind into this state of unity and union and wholeness, which is the whole point of spiritual awakening. So that's what this movie is really kind of just showing. First, it shows the focus on the differences, the desire to be right about the differences, and then she described her relationship with Joe as just saying, we both realized we didn't want the same thing. And that's the whole point. The point of wanting forgiveness, or wanting the purpose, wanting the shared purpose, is what leads, really, it defines, it gives the relationship all the meaning that it will ever have. And then the idea of wanting to be right about, I wanted this, they wanted that, I wanted this, that's just the design of the ego, where basically relationships are set up to fail, meaning they're set up to reinforce the belief in separation. And that's not what the Holy Spirit uses relationships for. So, okay, we'll get back. Here we go. We're seeing a little progression here now. From the looks on their faces, yeah, it's interesting that everything in the projection was put there. In fact, the whole cosmos arose from the fear of love. That's what's behind the Big Bang, is the fear of love, fear of God's love. And so you can see it play out in relationships, where the camera pulls back. First it's on her face, and she's just has this big smile and this blissfulness. Then it brings both their faces in, and you can see him kind of staring off with his frightened eyes. So she's in bliss and he's terrified. But it's just showing that everything beneath the surface of things on consciousness is this underlying fear of love. And the fear of love is letting go of what was made to take the place of love, which is what the form is. The form was made by the ego to take the place of love. It's a substitute for love. But it's not conscious. It's not conscious at all. So when the mind is not conscious of this fear of love, then it fears things in the world, and it fears things that it associates with the past, and it fears things in the future. And so it kind of illustrates the different perceptions, one feeling blissful, one feeling frightened, because in the end, without a unified purpose, relationships are set up by the ego to fail. There's one point in the Course where Jesus says, only a constant purpose can stabilize events. So only a shared purpose, only a constant purpose held in mind can stabilize the events of time and space. There is no other way to find stability. And the ego set up the world to basically seek and do not find, where Jesus said in the Bible, seek and you shall find, knock and the door shall be opened, but the world was set up. So that's one of those striking scenes right there, where all that they've been through, and then when it came down to them spending the night together like that, then you can see that on the contrast of the faces. So it's just coming little by little to start to take that into awareness, like, oh, okay, if I'm looking for something in the world, or believing in something in the world, then that sets up a world of changing images in which the mind can seek and do not find among the images. Try this, no, not satisfied, that, not satisfied, that, not satisfied, that, not satisfied, and then it has to come back to a place of release of what it thought it wanted and what it thought it understood. Because when we try to understand the projected world of images, there is no real understanding. There is no understanding that can be found in the form. Because the form was made to cover over understanding, to cover over the meaning. And so it finally flips around to that point where you see that the game of seek and do not find is not going to work. It's not going to succeed. It's destined to be set up, like lesson 300, basically, the world was set up. It's a place where everyone who comes to the world seems to suffer and die, and that's how it was set up. It's all bodies seem to end in what the ego defines as death. And so that's the norm, that's the standard. But that construct is just made by the ego to keep the mind from going within toward the light. So this movie is so good for that, because it's kind of showing all the various attempts at finding connection and love and intimacy through all of the linear time ways, but it doesn't succeed. It's coming closer to start to see it's a setup. And then when you start to see, oh my gosh, it's a setup. It's a setup. It was set up for failure. Then you start to see the need to come into purpose. And that's what forgiveness is about. That's what is underneath spiritual community. That's what the goal of relationship really is everything that was made by the ego, and specialness is used to bring the mind back to that unified purpose. Like our 4.5-hour meeting that started off, at 9:30 in the morning and went on and on and on and on, but the only way that you get into the joy, and the only way that you lose track of time, is through the purpose. It's what that was behind when we just did all of our improvs, which was beautiful. But the improvs were just an opportunity to go into the spontaneity, move toward that spontaneous moment where you just feel connection, to move toward the present moment. And that's the next paradigm. That's the, what do we call it? The next generation. That's the next generation is going really fully into that spontaneity, so fully into the spontaneity that you actually start to lose track of the passage of time. Doesn't that sound exciting? What time is it? I don't know. What day is it? I don't know. What month is it? What year is it? I don't know. You're coming more to that state of, you just start to lose track of it. Lose track of the passage of time. So you can see that symbol there. Norah Ephraim, this is This is one of her early movies, but she wrote this movie, and she just has a string of movies that go deeper towards the meaning. What's the purpose underneath it all? And they're always comical like this. Even Lisa was laughing so hard you almost were choking there with that one old couple. But that's the beauty of it. We go for losing track of it. So, okay, now they've reached the stage where they seem to come together in a romantic way, but then, yeah, let's see where it goes from here. Well, when the ego is threatened, its number one defense is break communication. And the Course in Miracles says, heaven is reached through communication, period. So you can see the contrast. That's why the communication is so important, because when the ego gets threatened, it will attempt to break communication. And so it's part of a scheme that plays out in form. It seems like she's not been taking calls, and it seems like a break in communication. But again, everything in form is just a projection of what's going on in the mind. It is reestablishing communication, you might say, with the Creator, with the Source, is what spiritual awakening is about. That's the alignment that's required in the mind. But anything that's felt to be broken then just gets played out over and over and over in form. So, yeah, we're seeing kind of the special love, special hate relationship. They're kind of moving, talking about feelings, opening up, opening their hearts, opening, and then when they slept together, it wasn't that the sex was the separating thing. It was the interpretation of what happened. And whenever there are separate interpretations, that is where the ego is sponsoring the belief in differences and separation. So they have to come back more to a point where they can start to talk. You notice after he took off after that night that they had, then when they tried to come back, or they were eating the green salads, you could see him saying, we had already shared all of our stories, and we frankly had nothing to talk about. And so, when you try to go from going deeper and deeper into a closeness and no private thoughts, no people pleasing, and then you try to downgrade back to small talk, it does not go over well. You can't go from intimate communication and downgrade to small talk. That's just another ego defense. Talking about the weather, talking about this, talking about that, and then basically then for Sally, the Sally character, she said, I can't do this. And so it's like it just flares up, the ego flares up the belief in differences, and then it's only through communication, and it's only through coming back toward that shared purpose that the connection seems to be reestablished. The feeling of the experience of connection relies on that intuitive connection, really, with the Holy Spirit. That's why there's a huge resistance initially to hearing the voice for God, but then in the end, it starts to become more apparent that that's why there's a practice of forgiveness. That's why there's a desire to open up to the Holy Spirit, because that's the only thing, that purpose is the only way to bring restoration or salvation to the mind. It has nothing to do with the form, though. It's like attempting to do the restoration through the form and having an outcome in form. Will be connected when it looks this way or it looks that way. And in the end, the thing I read about the relationships, some are lifelong relationships. he's saying in the Course that it's rare, but in the end, I feel like you start to see the inevitability of being so devoted to a shared purpose that you start to see that the whole purpose of what seem to be the relationships, or the relationships in form, is only to come back to that union experience and that shared purpose in the mind. That in the end, it was never about the form, it was just about the connection in the mind with the Holy Spirit, that everything was being used by the Holy Spirit, and so the form you start to see is like a theater, or like props. It's just props. Or we have that, what's that movie where Click, I think it's Morty in there, says at the beginning of the movie, it's just cornflakes. He's meaning all of time and space is cornflakes. And then, as the Adam Sandler character goes through the dramas in his life where everything starts to dismantle and fall apart, and he feels like he's wasted his life and broken up all of his relationships, there comes Morty again to come in and say, it's cornflakes. It's just cornflakes. It's like the goal of the work with the Course, to start to see that your history and your life and everything you were concerned about in form is cornflakes. It's a bowl of cornflakes. We were in this same room. The last movie gathering I did was during the Spanish 2-day, and I showed 50 First Dates. And I was sharing in that gathering, we were talking about time and memory, and then we were talking about the purpose of relationships. And what I was saying at that time was that it's really comes down to time, because when the mind is looking for love, and looking for love, we'll say, through the form, it's basically looking for continuity in linear time. But continuity, the only continuity there is eternity, forever. Continuity, that's what heaven is continuity. And then the present moment is the closest approximation to that continuity. So that's why what is sought for in the form is the continuity. So finally the realization starts to dawn, like, oh, I'm seeking for connection, I'm seeking for depth, I'm seeking for continuity, I'm seeking for love. And what Jesus is saying, that the ego tries to force continuity onto time. You can hear that word force. It has generated a giant construct called time and space, and then it tries to force the mind, force feed the sleeping mind to accept past, present, future. It tries to force continuity onto past, present, future. It invented past, present, future, and now it's trying to force continuity or force love onto it, because it's a substitute reality, and it needs the mind to buy into the trick, to buy into the forcing it. So that's, aside from the seeking for love through possession, conquest, through control, through competition, those are just a few things to name what the pursuit of love and form goes under. All of those things are destined to fail, because all those things were invented by the ego, and the ego is trying to block the mind from continuity. Love is continuity. Love, that's what forever is. No beginning, no end. And this was talking about that in that 50 First Dates. So we can see that in this movie, is that now we're seeing it played out where, it's good. He's calling up and he's saying this we're coming into the season of forgiveness, and he used the forgiveness word. But what he's really trying to do here is trying to take a step, a willingness for a step to reestablish communication. Because in the end, that is the direction towards forgiveness. It's through communication. But it's through heart-to-heart communication. It's through the communication that's inspired by love, inspired by the heart, not communication that's made to try to make an outcome happen in form, but just through, like, here I have nothing to hide. Here I would give my heart. Here I'm not afraid to give love, and in the end, that's what takes the mind back to the remembrance of itself. Wow, credits before and after. That's a non-duality song. Let's call the whole thing off. All the dual, and then call it off. So. Okay. Hope you enjoyed it. That was a classic. Yeah, a lot of laughter in there, but deep stuff.